everyone for joining us tonight. I hope you can all hear me well, at least. We have that going. Awesome. Cool. So tonight we have one of our popular apéro talks. So for those of you who don't know what an apéro is a French word for just having some wine and olives and bread and cheese. I see Julien is smiling from his camera. This is very typical French, is basically what you have before dinner. Anyway, we're super excited to have Tim with us to talk about the imposter syndrome. And one of the reasons why we wanted to have this talk is because as a coding bootcamp at Le Wagon, we have, of course, quite a lot of students who are coming from a background that is, well, not always technical and not necessarily technical. Actually, the majority of our students have no technical background or no coding background. And so they do feel that imposter syndrome very, very much, especially when they go on and well, go for their first interviews or land their first freelancer project. And so we wanted to have a, let's say, some experience sharing session with someone who's gone through this and hopefully managed to cope with it a little bit. And hopefully Tim will give some tips on how to deal with it. Yeah, we'll first have I believe a very quick talk, maybe 20-25 minutes first with Tim, and then we'll have a Q&A session. So we prepared some questions from our side, but of course, this is more interesting if some of you have questions of your own. So don't hesitate to drop them in the chat, and we'll make sure that they are all answered. One thing I'd like to do as well is, for those of you who do not know anything about Le Wagon, about what we are, I just want to give a very, very short intro. So we are a coding bootcamp located in Tokyo. We're based out of Meguro, a really cool co-working space called Impact Hub. And so we are a coding bootcamp, and we deliver both web development and data science education in 9 weeks or 24 weeks. I don't want to talk too much about it because tonight is Tim's night. So what we'll do instead is we'll drop our link to our website in the chat. So don't hesitate to check it out. You can also book some quick calls with us if you're curious about what we do. Or we can even welcome you to our campus. We are totally open. That's it for the introduction. That's it for me. And I think I'll leave the floor for Tim and his presentation. Tim.
Can I thank you so much?
Sorry, go ahead.
Can you hear me normally right now?
All good.
Good, amazing. Thank you so much for intro. I'll just have one small addition. Actually, we are right now opening the applications for our free online learning series called Programming for Everybody. I think some people here also joined our first and second edition before. So Programming for Everybody is a free 6 live lectures for complete beginners in programming that we deliver from October 27th to November 12th. This is how we want to benefit our community by sharing this free knowledge, by guiding you through all these difficult foundations programming. So the deadline for submitting your application is October 23rd, and I just shared the link in the chat. So those of you who are interested to get into the tech community, feel free to register. Okay. I'm done with some small shameless promo, like Sylvain says. Now, giving the microphone to Tim. Tim, please feel free to have your presentation.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. So let me just share this real quick. Keynote. Okay, I think it looks all right. Oh, I'm at the very end. All right, so let's do this shit. As you heard, my name's Tim. It's nice to meet you all. I appreciate you guys taking the time to sit here and listen to me for a bit. I'll try to keep the talk around about 20 minutes. That seems to be where it was in practice. But to kind of reiterate Sasha and Sylvain for a second, I'm an iOS developer. I live in Tokyo, like I think many of you from the chat. Sasha and Sylvain came across a tweet of mine like a week and a half ago or something, where at one point, you know, I have this app called Pocket Rocket that helps space enthusiasts track and watch upcoming SpaceX rocket launches. And it's not, you know, the easiest thing to manage and develop your own application. So often, like when I'm making it or trying to update it, things don't go well. So in this particular week, I was just getting hammered by my customers after launching a new feature. And it wasn't the smoothest launch. It wasn't the worst either, but it was in the middle of, you know, I think like everybody right now is just getting like hit by the world at large. So it was a particularly stressful time personally, and then like the professional stuff just tacked on, and altogether, I just felt like I was getting crushed. And this, I should have skipped to this slide a second ago. And so I send this this tweet out that says, you know, like most days I feel like I suck at my job, you know, despite trying. But then I get an email like this one from this nice customer who's saying, you know, despite, you know, me and my paranoia, thanks for doing a great job. I just resubscribed for another year of your service. Thanks for a job well done. So it was this really relieving moment. And so I guess one of them picked up on that. And so they asked me to talk about, you know, this juxtaposition of having this product that, you know, at one time when we launched in April, was the #1 entertainment app in the App Store, and yet, you know, still feeling like kind of like an abject failure. So I'm here to do that. And before I really get into it, you know, I want to acknowledge the kind of giant white elephant in the room that is me, a giant white American male in tech, who's maybe like the last person you'd expect to talk about feeling like an outsider or feeling like an imposter in some situation. But you know, since I was asked, you know, I want to take advantage of the opportunity and try to serve your time as best as I can, so that people who don't look like me can benefit from the things that I've learned. So let's see. Back in January of 2012 is when I started my career in technology. I had joined this company, Riot Games, in Los Angeles to help them build furniture for a swell of new employees, because their game, League of Legends, was at the beginning stages of a supernova explosion of growth. So I was called in to be a facilities assistant temp, you know, and before that I had done like some production assistant work in Hollywood, but I liked Riot so much that I ended up staying there and like building bookshelves for them and desks for them and cleaning their kitchens for like 8 months. And, you know, at the time, and I think generally still, Riot was such a progressive company, an open-minded company, that they let someone like me go from cleaning their kitchens and building furniture to building their product and managing parts of their roadmap. So I joined the product management team and started working on the actual software behind the game in the business. So like the online store for purchasing game content, the backend systems that allowed for like multiplayer play, the game itself and the content within the game itself. And then eventually I finished my career there managing the infrastructure that made the game available all over the world. And so, you know, all of that was coming from a college dropout background, where I was studying English for a year. So everything that I did at Riot, I had zero experience and zero qualifications to do any of. And so, you know, at the end of that 4 years, Riot was acquired in whole by its, you know, its main Chinese investor. And the little amount of stock that I had from cleaning their kitchens allowed me to pay off my student loans. And so when that happened, I you know, packed my bags and I moved to the Bay Area to try to take a, you know, more risky career move, and join like the broader tech community. I forgot to mention to show this one. This was us like at the reception desk at Riot, and then eventually the product management picture. So I found a strategic role out in the Bay for, you know, a non-technical person like myself in venture capital, and so I moved up there to pursue that job. But, you know, at the time, I didn't know that venture capital is a place where you go to have your soul exercised from your body. So I left that job pretty quickly and went back into product management. And then after 2 years of working in the Bay, I decided to kind of stop lying to myself about what I really wanted from life, and acknowledge that the things that made me happiest were programming and spending all of my time in Asia. So I resolved to, you know, become an engineer and find a way to live in Japan. So 2 years later, after teaching myself programming and, you know, putting a lot of trust into this one project to sort of prove my ability as a designer and a developer, more a developer, I eventually, you know, I now have my own company here. I have that I sponsor my visa through. I have, you know, my own business through Pocket Rocket, in addition to client work. So I was able to do a lot of these things despite kind of the things about myself that always sort of plague me internally. You know, every position that I had at Riot was challenged by my history of being an undereducated, lower class kid from the States, who, you know, accidentally found himself amongst, you know, the people at Riot at the time were like Ivy League economists and MIT computer scientists, and then just generally industry titans, people who had made like World of Warcraft and all of Blizzard's games, and things like Counter-Strike and every title that you can imagine. You know, someone that was influential in the making of that game was at Riot. So doing all those jobs, I constantly felt like I was in over my head, and was a pure outcast in a group of people who I felt were born for these positions. And I was just somehow lucky enough to stumble upon one of them, you know, like it was like $100 bill just like sitting on the ground. You know, so despite that, I was able to still kind of craft a life that I, you know, enjoy living most days, generally. So throughout that career, from being like a guy cleaning the kitchens at this company to, you know, now having this silly app and my own business in Japan, I held a couple of principles along the way that helped me kind of get past the insecurities of, you know, being this sort of this outlier amongst, you know, what looked like a statistical like average of excellent people. So I wanted to, I tried to, for like a minute, to think about like what really is, you know, this like imposter feeling, but you know, not being a psychologist, you know, I won't even really attempt to define exactly what it is. But, you know, because I think it's highly variant between everybody that experiences it. Um, so what I think that I experience is just insecurities by comparison of other people. So I'll talk about how I experience these insecurities and how I deal with them, so that, you know, in hope that some of you can relate to it, and then maybe use some of the same frameworks for dealing with it yourself. So let's see. One of the first things is this that I had was this illusion of qualification. You know, it's like I mentioned, where I come from, and the kind of social class that I grew up in, and the lack of education, and then from the lack of education, the lack of skill. They always were accompanied by these, like, you know, the internal monologue of, oh wow, you know, I don't have these things, so I can't do this. I'm not smart enough to do that. I'm not qualified for this. Or, you know, the people that I'm working with, you know, have no idea how, like, just how dumb I am. And another large or theme was this longing for belonging, which I know is a very bad title. But this I think comes from like straight out of like Psych 101. You know, this is like a kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs sort of effect, where you as a Homo sapien, you know, you have this this need in you to be part of some sort of social group in order to have a better chance of survival. So, you know, you have these feelings of like, yeah, all the other people besides you, everyone's so much smarter than me, right? And why aren't you, you know, the confident person? Or you know, you find these reasons to exclude yourself from these groups that, you know, you want belonging in. So these two things always generated this really heavy feeling of jealousy towards other people, either in the communities that I was in or at the companies that I was with, and resentment to them. And when you know, when I had these things, they weren't really anything about the other people that I was looking at. You know, what I tended to think that they are, and still believe that they are projections of, you know, my own insecurities, where how I felt about them was really how I felt about myself. So before I move on from this one, one thing that I've been trying to do recently, instead of, you know, having a sort of feeling of jealousy or resentment for anybody, I specifically try to go out of my way to make friends and not enemies. So if I see someone that exhibits, you know, some talent that I'm like, wow, I wish I could design like that, or I wish I could engineer something like that, I try to default to first celebrating their talent, and then trying to befriend them, rather than stewing in my own envy of what they can do. And another big thing that I think it's caused for me is this this fear of failure, which is another effect that spawns from like my own personal insecurities. So it, you know, it always creates this like fear of starting, and this like this stagnancy and risk aversion and change aversion to anything that I'm actively doing, or anything that I want to begin pursuing. And this has been, I think, me making an excuse to not do something as a worry that what I'm actually doing is proving myself right. If I do embark on something and fail it, I'm you know, proving to myself that I am not as smart as I maybe project myself to be, or you know, that I'm proving to other people, or proving to myself that other people think that I'm dumb. You know, all of these kind of like mental gymnastics of just sort of self-deprecation and self-destruction. And so it's been ever since launching the app, this has been a thing that I've struggled with, where, you know, we had this initial success, and it was, you know, it got to that like #1 spot, and, you know, made like enough for me and I think my colleagues to be able to pay rent for a little while. But it still sits there, you know, because it's a different type now where, instead of waiting for the confirmation that you aren't good at your job, you have this fear of, or maybe proving it in a different way, where you've had the success, but now you have to repeat it. And what TV writers and movie writers tend to do with this is, you know, if they ever have like a hit, like let's say someone writes some movie and it's like a blockbuster on their first go, then their second movie, you know, scares them to death. So what the other writers in their community tell them is, don't write for your second movie, write for your third movie. So just psychologically make a jump, and remove that pressure from yourself. And this is a thing that I'm actively trying to do, because not being able to, you know, serve my customers the way that I want to, it, you know, really pisses me off. But, you know, it's just a sort of self-created effect. So, you know, there's all this, all these anxieties, but, you know, I'm still here and I'm still doing this job. And I'm still, you know, the app is still making money, and I'm still growing as an engineer. So I wanted to talk about a couple things that I have learned about this that I think could help other people. So when I try to help myself, one of the first things I realize in like analyzing what's going on is that everything is generally just in my own head. Any insecurity that I have about my own ability, or my own intellect, is all just myself, again, fabricating reasons to potentially not do something. And so any comparison that I'm making with myself and other people, again, is only in my own mind. I don't think that other people are making, you know, these same calculations. I'm kind of the only one, I think, having an internal monologue that serves the convenience of scaring me out of doing something that I worry is too risky or too hard. And, you know, I generally almost default to thinking that people believe my work is like shitty or ugly or sloppy. But again, you know, these are personal insecurities that project themselves out of me and into the voice of other people. And so, you know, I used to think the same thing about my appearance. Like, oh, people can notice that my hair is receding or that my arms are weak. But, you know, I think the reality is that nobody really gives a single shit. Everyone's paying attention to their own lives, and they all have their own problems. So all of the things that I'm making up are, again, things that I'm making up, and they're just in my own head. So, you know, this tends to make me think, or I think make people think, and make me used to believe that if I'm I'm somewhere that I don't belong. But generally, I think if you're finding yourself in a position like that, then, you know, you've recently elevated yourself into a place that's challenging you more than you've been challenged before. So, you know, you're reaching some new place, which is in itself an accomplishment that I think should be celebrated. So the other thing that, you know, I think is, you know, most personally valuable to me is that these things, these insecurities they aren't completely negative. They're not completely counterproductive. They only are as long as you sort of allow them to be. So when I was back at Riot and I saw these people that had these you know, enviable education histories or work histories, you know, I would always think like, oh wow, well, you know, I'm screwed. But the truth was that you know, that I was not educated in the same way was a great thing, because it meant that, you know, my experience and my history as a human meant that I knew things that these people didn't, and that I could do things that these people can't. And you know, my interests you know, kind of work similarly. If I have a broader view, if I bring my own interests to the discussion, then a broader view of the world is brought to making something, or making some product, or making some experience, which is a net positive. So if I generally tend to think that if you somehow get yourself into this like position of being some outlier, then, you know, that's a thing, or a sign that you're probably doing something right. You know, if you are amongst these like highly, you know, educated people in like the tech community, which I think most of us are, and you don't have that background, good for you. You're doing great. And you know, one thing that kind of like always rings true to me is this this saying from, it's actually like international politics, and it has really no place here, but the principle behind it, I think, is a good one, of never letting a good crisis go to waste. So, you know, I feel like shit about myself all the time. And you know, if you're feeling, you know, similar emotions, I think it's a sign that you are a person that's capable of self-awareness and self-criticism. And this awareness, you know, is an identification of something about yourself that you're uncomfortable with, which is fantastic, because it then makes it really easy for you to know where to focus your time to become the person that you are happy being, and that you're proud of. So, you know, this is an incredibly powerful tool. And I'm often criticized by my friends and my family for this. But, you know, I consider my self-criticism and, you know, frankly, a little bit of self-loathing to be, you know, my greatest strategic advantage. I know exactly what I don't like about myself. So I spend a lot of my time trying to become the opposite person of that. And you know, I think has a dramatic, I think it's dramatically improved my life because of it. You know, it's the reason why I can do math now. You know, a couple of years ago I couldn't do long division, but I got so pissed off at myself that I spent like 4 months straight going through all of Khan Academy, starting at 1+1 and all the way through calculus. It's why I can, you know, build software now, or speak Japanese, or why I live in Japan. All these things that I hated, you know, about myself and my life were just fodder for how to spend my time to live a life and be a person that I like. But you know, with this, it's kind of a double-edged sword. So if you do, you know, try to embrace the things that you hate about yourself, I'd encourage you to proceed with caution. You know, it's a very powerful thing to leverage negativity into a positive outcome, but I wouldn't encourage you to ever really punish yourself because of as a result of it. You know, use it as energy, but don't use it to completely self-destruct. Rebuild yourself, but don't totally annihilate yourself. I'm getting to the last points here. I apologize for dragging on. But one thing is like that's also been really useful is sort of the acknowledgement of where, like, what position I'm in as someone who isn't entirely proud of who I am or what I'm able to do. And that position is one of like being at the bottom, which means that, you know, if I try to do anything, that effort only has upside. So failure isn't totally an option. Where like if I fail, you know, where am I going to go? I already hate myself. So if I try something and it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, no change. So any attempt at some new endeavor will largely have you know, a net positive outcome. And so this has like application to generally I think anything. If you're like applying for a new job, you know, guess what? You already don't have that job. So if they reject you, again, you have lost nothing. You maybe not have gained anything either. But if they give you that job, look at you. You know, you're king or queen of the world. And then, you know, if you want to network with somebody that you don't know, well, right now you don't know them. So you reach out to them, you get you get no response. Again, net neutral. But the best thing that could happen, you make a great friend, you make a great connection. So you only have something to gain. And you know, to now like actually wrap it up, I'll talk quickly about a couple things that I think are true based on observation and based on my experience. So one of the first things is that nobody knows anything, you know. Every like industry expert that I've ever met, they are just as confused about the thing that they're doing as I am about the thing that I'm doing. It's just, you know, different levels. They started at some position of discomfort, grew into that position, and then were elevated either by like a promotion or by necessity into some new you know, position of responsibility where again they're uncomfortable. But you know, by applying the things that they had learned previously, then maybe they have success there again, and then they become some expert at some new level, you know. But you know, once they get there, guess what? They don't know shit. And I think that that's just true for everything that I've done, everything that I've seen my friends do. So don't put too much pressure on yourself, because I think everybody is generally just as unsure of themselves as you or I am. So you know, there's probably a question of like, okay, well, if I work on this, does it ever get better? And in my experience, yes and no. The things that you identify that you dislike about yourself or that you want to improve, yeah, those things get better. But your brain, being this like self-destructive pink mush that it is, will always find some new thing to fixate on to give you some new insecurity. So it's just a cycle. The things that you hate today, you may not hate tomorrow, but you don't even know what you're going to hate tomorrow. Like, you know, and I think this is true for any industry, and it's not just tech. I think, you know, we see it in tech because this is where we live. But if you study like any of the arts, you see it all over the place. Like, okay, Dr. Dre, for example, one of the greatest rappers of all time, hates the way that he sounds when he sings. You know, and this is a guy that wrote The Chronic, and really defined hip hop even through today. And then, you know, Richard Feynman as well. So the sciences. One of the guy that like, you know, the godfather of quantum theory, one of the you know, most influential members of the Manhattan Project. When he was hired onto the Manhattan Project, you know, he thought to himself, like, oh my God, these people have no idea how much I don't know. But you know what? If I screw up, that's on them. They hired me. They're going to get exactly what they hired. So, you know, even the best people, they feel all these same things too. So um, I think in a positive way, you know, don't let yourself consider your own insecurities too remarkable. Um, so is that bad news? I don't think entirely. You know, again, like I said before, you can use these things to identify the things that you want to improve about yourself, which then gives you a constant and infinitely replenishable tool for self-improvement. You know, none of us really we didn't have a lot of choice, you know, when we came into the world. Nobody wants these feelings. You know, we didn't choose our brains. We didn't choose our brain chemistry or our DNA. But we can understand what's going on and identify what we want from it, and choose how we want to spend our energy because of it. So you can just take all those negatives, flip them around, invert them, and say, these are the things that I don't like right now, and these are the things that I'm going to become later, and to make myself a happy person. So, you know, given that anybody that's listening to this is doing that, you're probably, you know, thinking about how to improve yourself already, which in which case, you know, you're already on your way. So the only thing I'd encourage you to do is just keep going. Eventually, you know, you'll do things that you're extremely proud of, and you'll be a person that you're extremely proud of. And then you'll hate yourself again, but you know, you'll at least have like the mechanisms to feel better eventually. So thank you very much. That's my time.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you for very honest presentation about your life story, about your experience, about how you went from, say, cleaning offices.
Yeah.
From
Yeah, cleaning the kitchens. Yeah.
From cleaning kitchens to the startup founder and developer. How many years did it take you?
Well, the kitchens to managing the infrastructure stuff was 4 years, and then 2 years in the Bay Area, and it's been 2.5 years since I moved to Japan. So, I mean, that's a total of like 8.5. But you know, the way that I live my life will not resemble how anybody else does. Everyone will have, I think, their own velocity or timeline.
Yeah, definitely. And I see that a lot of people already thanking you in the chat for your very...
Really?
Yes. If you
I
look
don't
at
see
the
that.
chat, you will see that the people thanking you. And of course, as you said, everyone has his own story.
Oh, I see the yeah.
But definitely your story resonates with many people. We all have our different, yes, problems. And, you know, I want to have today's event, a bit interactive. So I strongly encourage the people who we have in our audience to share their opinion, insights. You don't have to, you know, mute yourself and talk it on the stage. You can write about it in the chat, or you can just, yeah, like send a message. Or also, if you have any questions to Tim, please feel free to ask them. Once again,
yeah, I'm open for anything.
Yeah, we see all the team is very open for for anything. Okay, and well, people still may be thinking, racking their brains for some question. I would like to ask some question that our team wanted to ask you. Is that you?
Yeah, hit me.
You mentioned that you don't think that the other industries are suffering that much from the imposter syndrome. as tech?
No, I think that they do. I think the only one that doesn't is politics, you know, because I think it's a society of sociopaths. But I think generally everyone feels some level of discomfort, but I think we are the only ones that, I mean, we're talking about it right now because we're in the same community, but I'm sure like if you ask anyone from anywhere else, they would agree that they feel some level of the same feelings.
Thank you. And we also have an experience from Naval here. You guys, I can't read this all because it's too long, but I strongly encourage all of you to look at the chat and see the story of Naval. Meanwhile, people reading the story of Naval, also Hugo, you are free to unmute yourself and speak.
Hey, Sasha, thank you. My name is Hugo. I know some people, at least I know some names here in the chat. I did Lowagan in 2018. I'm seeing at least Sylvan, which is a very nice person I met in the bootcamp. Hi, Sylvan, and hi, everyone else, if you were my colleague as well. I agree with pretty much everything that Tim said during the whole presentation. Thank you very much, Tim, for highlighting your perspective. When I've seen the theme or the topic of this conversation, it felt really much the same feeling I have about me and about my job. I speak with some colleagues and with some friends, and apparently all of them have the same kind of feeling about their own job. So it seems that is a feeling that affects everyone.
Right.
What I do, what I can add as an advice, if I can say this way, is that I do feel pretty much that most of the fears I have is because I never experienced a certain task or a certain job. I think that once you have the guts to start, it's when you start feeling less pressured and you start to have less the idea that you are not good enough to do a certain task. And the two advices I have to give, the two advices I have to give everyone to start losing that fear, it's the same thing I do. The first of all is not having the fear to start, because you will only know if you are good or bad at a certain job or a certain task or a certain subject. It's when you start and when you have the experience to perform that actual task. And the second advice, even more important, to start to minimize the fear you have, is start to having a mentor or a buddy or a tutor that can clarify you all the questions you have, that can guide you through the process in order to try to do less errors and try to do from the start more things right. And it's the main two advices I can give anyone if you are fearing of starting something, or if you are thinking about should I do this or should I not do that. Start to finding a buddy, someone that you trust, and someone that you can feel that that person can hear you, and jump into the action and start doing the thing you are scared of. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think the first point you had is something that I've experienced a lot too, which is just by starting, you figure out how wrong you are about your own insecurities, and you develop the confidence to keep trying again, or just to pick up enough momentum to not stop. And then, having some sort of friend or mentor, even as someone to just say like, hey, I feel terrible about this thing. Have you ever felt that? And then often, like you said, everyone else feels the same way. They can sort of confirm that it's not just you, that it's just a thing that a lot of people experience. And I think that's especially true with something like software, where we're all generally learning the same things. So the same things frustrate different people for the same reason. So when I teach people programming, they'll come to me and say, hey, why do for loops suck as a beginner? And it's like, oh, well, because you have to realize that this thing's happening, and then like, oh yeah, of course, that's what's going on. So both good points.
Tim, do you think that the people who experience imposter syndromes are often perfectionists?
I mean, there's a high likelihood. You know, I think you probably have to ask them, you know. There's I think a lot of the same feelings come from, you know, trying to make something perfect, and then having the fear of not doing it, and then, you know, not finishing something or not sharing something because you don't think that it's perfect or right. So I think the paranoia is sort of increased potentially if you are a perfectionist. So I think I agree with Noel.
Maybe partly it's because the internet is full of the stories of some successful founders or some other people who, you know, who struggle a lot, who did a lot, who suffered, and then they became super successful and the product is super cool. So we look at these people and we compare our stories to them, and maybe it's a bit different.
Right. Yeah. So that was one reason why I moved to Japan, was because I think I had been trying to live somebody else's dream in the US by like joining venture capital out of video games. I didn't want to do venture capital. I don't know why the hell I did that. And then once I realized that I was like trying to live the narrative that I kept reading about or like seeing on TV, then I kind of snapped out of it and said, okay, well, what do I really want? And that was to like wake up and eat, you know, onigiri every day, or go find like the best ramen when it's snowing. You know, not like land some dumb new funding round. I mean, I don't care at all about that.
So we talk a lot about how people feel inside when they have imposter syndrome, but do you think it's possible to notice if someone is having imposter syndrome, if your friend or colleague is having it? Do you think it's possible to see?
Oh yeah, totally. You know, I think people will express themselves to even like a small extent, where if they're learning something, then, you know, the frustration will come out. And if you recognize that frustration as one that you've had, that kind of sounds like, I'm too dumb for this. Like that's the kernel, you know?
And I think we talked with you a bit about it before the event. We talked about the salary negotiations, especially in the tech, right? So for some, you mentioned to me that you think that the imposter syndrome sometimes prevents people from, you know, saying their normal salary, what they really want, so they have to lower their plank. What do you think about it?
Right. So I think if a lot of you are in the process or in the beginning stages of finishing your education and then looking for jobs and thinking about how much you're expecting to earn from this type of job, the one thing I would offer is that, you know, you don't want to ever sell yourself short. And you never want to initially undervalue yourself because you think that you aren't good enough for that job, or that you're like getting a lucky pass, and that someone is doing you a favor by hiring you. Because none of those things are probably going to be true. Like one, software is very hard. So if you can do it even at like a fundamental level, or a beginner level, then you still do it better than most people on earth. And that's a powerful thing. You know, the person who's hiring you, maybe not a programmer, you know, they need someone to do what you can do. So something that I have to, I as like a person who now negotiates with potential clients what my salary is going to be, the best advice that I've gotten from my best friends is never negotiate against myself. If someone is saying, well, we can pay you this much, or how much are you looking for, always upsell, and then let them come back if need be, but never say, oh God, well, the average is this amount. So, but I really feel like I shouldn't have this job, so maybe I should say like 30% below that. Don't do that, you know. The best thing that you could probably do is not say any salary amount at all, and let them come to you with the first offer. And then that gives you the opportunity to let them create the ceiling, which might be dramatically higher than you ever thought possible. So for example, after I launched Pocket Rocket, a new client came to me, or a potential client came to me and said, I want to build this thing. And so I asked my friends like for some advice, and they expressed basically this. And so they were like, how much do you think, you know, what's your rate? And I'm like, well, I'd kind of leave that to you. I'm curious what you are okay with paying. And the first number that they gave me, I had made this kind of like gradient of what I thought was a fair price for my time, and then a price that was so high that it was maybe irresponsible for me to accept that like that high amount of money. And the first number that they gave me was second to the highest that I had offered as or projected as too high. And that was what they started with. And I could have negotiated higher, but I said, wow, I'll take it, you know. And then I immediately got an amount of money that I thought was impossible. So don't listen to yourself. You really have to silence yourself during negotiations, and get out of your own way, because software is really highly valued. Tokyo and Japan are kind of anomalies in their rates and how, you know, kind of humble they are. But you know, if you're working for international clients, let them come to you, because they need you more than you need them.
So the situation that you explain, it covers mainly when you are talking to a client, right? You're already in talks with a client, but for example, if you need to set up your rates as a junior freelancer, if you need to publish them somewhere, if you need to send like one pager with your rates and services, how do you think what the juniors freelancers should do in this case? How they should set up the rates?
Well, I think there's a couple things that come to mind. You know, if like, let's say you're totally freelance, you know, you're paying, you know, your own, you know, healthcare and rent and, you know, your own utilities and stuff like that. Like no company is taking care of anything for you. You need to mark yourself up at a minimum, because what you are doing is offloading the expense from the company onto yourself. So if you look at, you can start by like looking at the market averages for, you know, people of like a certain skill. But you know, you have to keep in mind that that's probably for a full-time position at a company that comes with all sorts of benefits. But if you are doing it for yourself, then you need to have your own costs factored into your prices. And you know, I think it's like maybe a bit important to make that semi-transparent wherever you're sharing your rates. I've done it sort of similar to that, where I look at, okay, what are like my costs of living here? How much do I need to have like every month to have a profit? And then how does that compare to like, let's say my colleagues in the US, and how much whoever is looking at that that sheet of prices is going to be making their own comparisons too. And given like my unique set of skills, adjusting my rate up or down from that. So, you know, I think you want to make sure that you're selling yourself appropriately, and you're pricing yourself appropriate to what you do bring to the client. Because perhaps it's not just software. You know, if you're managing the entire project, that would too, I think, contribute to a higher price, because you are again offloading some cost from your potential customer or client onto yourself. So I think there's a lot of ways to sort of to go about that, but at a minimum, I would recommend that.
Also, there is the one resource that I recall is maybe you know our friend Drew launched the platform called Open Salary. That's where software engineers can anonymously submit their salaries.
Tucci's boyfriend.
Okay, we will leave this private moment aside, but yeah.
My friend Tucci, they too.
So yeah, that's a very good platform. You guys can take a look. If you want to see how much software engineers get in Japan, some of the salaries really surprise me a lot. So it's a very good thing to, if you want to negotiate your salary, please have this amount on your mind. We also have some really good question in the chat from June. How about when you were still learning to code? How did the imposter syndrome look like back then? And how did you tell yourself about it?
Yeah. So that was about, it's still like less than 2 years ago now. So one thing that I try to think whenever I'm learning something new, you know, especially at this age, I'm like right now I'm 29, turning 30 next month. If I'm learning it just now, and then I see these people who have been, you know, programming since they were like a teenager or since they were in high school, you know, I try not to let, I would initially get freaked out, like, oh my God, what a head start that they have. But you know, they may have started early, but that doesn't mean that they are still learning at the same velocity. You know, now it's maybe like for them riding a bike, but maybe they're not taking like BMX lessons every Saturday, you know. They have now this like muscle memory, but if you as an adult who has like a higher capacity for learning and comprehension are learning it now, and you're doing it you know, regularly, then your velocity of learning will eventually catch you up to the people who are active in the community already. So you know, that I think turned out to be true to some extent, or at least to the extent that I don't worry about it anymore. So let me make sure I'm covering the question. So I mean, that's what it looked like for me. Now, because you have something to offer, but haven't you? Yeah. I think so part of the question is, you may remain a loser forever. I don't know, like if you continue to try, I've seen people, and I kind of consider myself, I mean, I highly consider myself in this group, where when I see them start out, I'm like, wow, good luck, pal. You got a long way to go. But what they did is they went that long way. They just kept going until eventually one day something clicked, and they became incredibly competent at the thing they were doing. You know, and then like with me, like I said before, I had trouble doing long division. I couldn't divide 3-digit numbers on a piece of paper when I was 27. You know, that was insanely embarrassing. But I just kept doing math, and then eventually I had enough competency to do trigonometry, and then eventually loved trigonometry. So then I just applied the same patience, and it doesn't take a certain level of genius or luck as long as you have the no, I'm not going to try right now. If you have that resilience, I think eventually it will be nearly impossible to at least not meet some minimum level of comfort. So again, like I would just say, just keep going, because especially with programming, it will eventually, land in the correct place in your mind, and you will gain so much momentum from then on, that you won't have a problem learning in the future. Your only challenges then will be figuring out how to use the sort of superpowers that you now attain.
Thank you, Tim. And you know what really motivates us at Levagon is the stories of our students who come to us from different backgrounds. We had a sushi chef joining the bootcamp. We had a construction worker. We had a bartender. We have now the violinist. So people from completely different non-tech backgrounds are joining the bootcamp from different ages, from 18 to 50 years old. Our oldest student was the 40-something. Right now she's working as a product manager at the Nokia startup. And all of them take their time. They, believe in themselves, and they go through this 9 weeks or 24 weeks of bootcamp, and then they become developers, product managers, UX designers. So some of them even started their tech companies. And one of our students who was in the first batch, he even wrote a book, Programma Ninaritai, like I want to become a programmer. So he's wrote a book about the programming after like 3 years of learning how to code. This kind of stories usually motivate me and my team a lot.
Great. Yeah. I mean, how could they not?
Yeah.
I want to mention one thing to Ramat real quick. So he's looking at these the figures in that open salary thing, and he's saying that it makes his imposter his syndrome much worse. The thing that you have to realize is that some people, they value software at dramatically different scales. So some companies will be able to pay you, more than you possibly dreamed. So don't read into those as like some value of the individual making it. You have to interpret those as how the person providing that money values the software. And you can fill the slot of the person whose bank account that money is going into. That's the reality of those numbers. I'm sure the person on the receiving end has done a lot of work to earn that, but that the real signal that is just what that company or that payment provider is valuing the things that they need.
Yeah, that's true. Completely agree that actually for some people it's extra motivation to go into tech, learn programming, become a programmer. But actually,
not a bad reason either.
Well, for some people, maybe their motivation to learn programming is not enough. They kind of try to justify it with the high salaries.
Yeah. Beneficial for everyone. More programmers and more people earning a nice living.
Okay, guys. So we are nearing to the end of the talk, and I encourage all of you to ask probably your last questions to Tim. And Tim, do you think it's possible to also share your contact in the chat if people want to, ask some advice?
Let me do that real quick. I'll share my my email and then Twitter. Kilaron, I apologize if I mispronounced that. Asked if you could start your coding journey over again, would you choose a different specialty? Definitely not. I really love iOS development. the reason I chose it was one, because I use these products all the time. Like I've got like my iPad right here, my phone, and AirPods, and my watch, and I got them in my ear as well. So I love the things I get to build for, because they make me happy innately, and then seeing my own work and my own effort into in them and usable within them is incredibly fulfilling. But the reason I chose iOS initially was because I thought it would be a good analog for understanding programming. So I know how iOS works intimately as a consumer. So I figured if I saw the APIs that Apple uses to expose things like button clicks or like calendar methods or UI interactions, I would understand them more intimately because I had used them so much as a consumer before. And that turned out to be true. So the code that I saw was more relatable and digestible to me because I knew how it would have, or what effect it would have on the actual application or on the device. And so now, thanks to like that sort of like shallow entry, or that like wading into the deep end from the very, very shallow end, anything that I try to do now is made much easier because I went in kind of through a very gentle or almost pre-known path. I had tried to learn Python before, and learning the syntax was enough, but then understanding how to create an app purely out of something like Python, I couldn't even wrap my head around it because I didn't know where the app began or where it ended. I knew where like an array began and where a for loop ended through that array, but how to make something that someone could use and how it could be installed anywhere, no idea. But all of that was made incredibly apparent and simple to me by starting with iOS. So I'm sure the same could be true of something like the web or with Android, or potentially even robotics. But I think that last one's maybe a bit of a stretch.
Thank you, Tim. There's a last question.
The blockchain one. I have no opinions on blockchain. I wish I was more informed about it, but it's one of those things that the people who are close to it feel like it's something, but we haven't really seen anything other than sort of trading yet. But I think it's just a matter of time until someone finds the right application. I think it's like a solution that doesn't have a problem. So time will tell.
Cool. And that was the last question, I assume. Once again,
looks like it.
Thank you so much, Tim, for your honest talk tonight. Thank you for sharing all the stories that happened to you and all your honest opinion. Also, I want to thank our audience, especially for those who were not shy and embarrassed to share their opinion in the chat and ask questions. We really appreciate it. And the more people talk about it openly, the more we feel much, comfortable and safe in this community. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Thank you so much for your time, team. I wish you good luck with your application. We are looking forward to seeing you succeeding. No, this is no pressure at all.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah. Thank you all again.
Thank you all. Bye.
Take care.